going on, everybody? It's your buddy, it's your pal Spaz Phoenix, and this is Flix. This time we're coming around to talk to you about Last Voyage of the Demeter, which is a movie that up until 2 weeks ago when I started seeing trailers, I didn't know existed. So, just saw this tonight. Gonna give you my quick thoughts. They're gonna be all over the place because I just saw the movie. What is Spaz like? Spaz likes monsters. Spaz likes serial killers. Spaz likes robots, aliens, ghosts, vampires, and pirates. Give me a movie with vampires and pirates. We're gonna have a good time. Now, before we get into anything, obviously there's spoilers in this because I just saw the movie. I'm going to talk to you about the movie. If you haven't seen the movie, which I highly recommend, I'll cut to the chase. Highly recommend it. Yeah, go watch it, come back and hear what I have to say, because I'm basically going to chop and change most of the movie for you while I'm talking about what I thought of it. The movie is not a blockbuster, which is absolutely fine, because I just saw The Meg 2 last weekend, and the weekend before I saw Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer, I only saw because my good buddy wanted to see it. And if you remember back in the day when I tried to do Walking Dead reviews on this channel, we started a show called Walking Stuff and Dead Things with me and my buddy Bird. Me and my buddy Bird went to see Oppenheimer because he wanted to see Oppenheimer, and I haven't seen my buddy in a long time. Oppenheimer is very good, very long. My ass was asleep at the end. But Cillian Murphy was really, really good in it. So if you're into that kind of thing, if you're into the historical stuff, definitely go see Oppenheimer. I could give two flipping rat shits about Barbie. Don't ask. And The Meg 2 is significantly ridiculous. It is appropriately ridiculous. It met all my expectations for its ridiculousness. We said goodbye to physics, louder and prouder and stronger than we do with the Fast Furious movies. But lots of blockbuster-ness in there. Some very Christopher Nolan blockbuster-ness in Oppenheimer. I don't know who did The Meg. Watching The Meg 2 makes me think it's almost a Michael Bay thing, but I don't think it is. But very, very blockbustery, very, very surfacey. This was not. And I was trying to think on my way home how I could describe this movie, because it doesn't hand you everything. It doesn't spoon feed you every little piece of information you need. You don't even have all your questions answered at the end. Some of the stuff that happens in the dark and in the shadows and in the whispery moments of the movie, it does make me think. Watching this movie was like listening to like an old fable or an old wives' tale or a ghost story, in the sense that if you were around a campfire, which I used to do a lot more than I do these days, but if you were around a campfire listening to one person tell a ghost story, you would be hearing the same thing, and you would all in your own minds have your own vision mentally of the story that the person is telling. I hope that makes sense. This movie left enough to the imagination, left enough to your own creative decisiveness, that it was kind of like watching a ghost story happen in front of you. And I thought that was really cool. Not a super loaded cast, but I do want to shout out the cast. Obviously, the one that holds it all together is Liam Cunningham, which most of you would know as Lord Davos from Game of Thrones. He brings a lot of gravitas to this movie. He plays the captain of the Demeter. The Demeter is the ship, for those of you that don't know. Young guy by the name of Woody Torman plays his grandson, who I think is like 9 or 10, so the fact that we don't know who Woody Torman is probably makes a lot of sense. His first mate is played by David Dasmalchian, and I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, who plays the creepy guy in almost every movie he's in, which was unfortunate because it made me think that he was going to turn out to be an asshole in this movie, and he really wasn't. The worker on the boat that we focus on the most in the movie, a guy by the name of Clemens, is played by Corey Hawkins, and Anna, who we'll talk about later, is played by, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of this name too, Aisling Franciosi? I don't know. So, what is it? Because I didn't know. The first trailer I saw, I didn't know it was about vampires until the very last second of the trailer said, oh, by the way, we call him Dracula. And then they modified all the trailers because people complained that they didn't know what it was about. And the voiceover guy at the beginning says, please come see the beginning of the story of Dracula in Last Voyage of the Demeter. I'll give you the Coles Notes, what it says. I was about to say what it says on Wikipedia, but I'm not on Wikipedia. I'm on IMDb, just for a bit of clarity and structure that I clearly don't have because I just watched it 5 seconds ago. It's based on a single chapter from Bram Stoker's classic 1879 novel Dracula. That entire chapter is apparently about the captain's log, the captain of the Demeter, and they decided to take one chapter of the book and make a whole movie out of it, which is absolutely fine. It was charted to carry... The ship, was charted to carry 24 unmarked wooden crates from Carpathia to London, England. Gee, I wonder what's in those crates. So, coming into the story now, we start off with the Demeter in, where is it? I'm gonna forget, from in Carpathia, and their short crew. So your first immediate introduction to all of these guys is the captain and his first mate, David Dasmalchian's character, his name is Wojciech. And he says, yeah, we're short 3 people. Go fix it. And he comes across the Clemens character, young black doctor, wants to get on the boat. The first mate cuts him down. Says, we don't need a doctor. We don't need a man of science. We need somebody with strong back and strong arms that can come in and do the strong work. They want a grunt. Basically, he doesn't want a smart guy. And he's like, what did he say? He said something along the lines of, what has a guy that's read a bunch of books ever done for a ship and their crew and whatnot? And he responds with, well, there's astrological charts and whatnot. He says, you can lose a map, you can lose a compass, but you'll never lose the stars. Which is a brilliant way of saying, yeah, you do need me, and I'm a doctor, and I'm smarter than you want to think I am. Now, he gets rejected in the early going because they want big, strong guys to lug shit around. I work in a warehouse. I can tell you exactly what that's like. Oh, yes. Not that I'm a big, strong guy by any stretch of the imagination. Let's not get it twisted. But what ends up happening is they pick a bunch of other losers that are just, they want a payday. They want to go on this ship and get the gold that they're going to get. They're lifting all these crates onto the boat. One of the ropes snaps. One of the crates crashes back down to the dock, almost squashes Toby, the captain's grandson. And who makes the save? It's Clemens. Clemens swipes the kid out of the way, gets himself a spot on the boat. Also, the guy whose spot he took takes one look at the crates going onto the boat and sees this very distinct dragon symbol on the crate. He says, that's more or less, that's the mark of the devil. I'm the fuck out of here. I don't need a paycheck that badly. Now, I find it funny because you got Lord Davos from Game of Thrones, and the seals that they have on these crates are very, very indicative of the Daenerys Targaryen ship banners and flags and whatnot with the dragon on them. So a little bit of Game of Thrones in your Dracula movie. It's not that bad at all. Very, very understated. He gets his way onto the ship. He immediately makes friends with the kid, which is nice. All these things to tell you that, yeah, there's a bunch of workers on this ship, but here's your main characters. You got the captain, you got his grandson, you got the first mate, and you got this new guy that just wormed, in the eyes of others, has just wormed his way onto the captain's ship by saving his son. We go around, the kid shows him around, the kid and him become friends, the kid introduces him to his dog, the dog's name is Huckleberry, but we call him Huck because that's a dog name. Introduces him to the chef, which is the titular, stereotypical, I am the religious person in this movie guy. He says, do as you're told, contribute to the ship, never take the Lord's name in vain or I won't feed you. Well, that's a great way to make religious people look awesome. But we carry on. He becomes closer friends with the kid. The boat takes off. We all wonder what's in the crates, except we all know what's in the crates. And from then on, you get to know some of these characters. I mean, the rest of the crew might as well have disposable crew member number 1, disposable crew member 2, disposable crew member number 3, etc. And they all, in this big, the movie basically says, here's the scene where you get to know about all these people. They're talking about, what are they going to, if they make this delivery in a certain amount of time, they're going to get extra money. What are you going to do with your money? I'm going to go to a whorehouse. I'm going to build myself a house. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And then the Clemens character, which is the character we're all supposed to be focusing on, he says, well, what I want can't really be bought with money. I want a greater understanding of the world. Everything has a purpose. There's science and nature and medicine, and I want... His thing throughout the whole movie is, I want to know as much as I can because the world needs to make sense. Now, going into this knowing that it's a vampire movie, that's a very cliche angle for one main character to come from, but it is pretty cool, and it gives him a direction, so to speak, throughout the movie. At an aside, you see the captain talking to his first mate. He talks about what's going to happen when they get to London. When he gets to London, I'm going to retire. I'm naming you the new captain of the Demeter. The crew couldn't ask for a better captain. I'm the old. It's like every cop movie where what's his name says, I'm getting too old for this shit. It's that, but done with much more gravitas, because Liam Cunningham, in this period piece, in this prominent role, who has all kinds of gravitas to the role, makes it a lot more endearing and involving than I'm getting too old for this shit. But he goes on to say, it's already heavily implied that whatever has happened to his daughter's not around anymore. That's why he's taking care of his grandson. From there, we get into a little bit more of the horror movie tropes. The kid shows Clemens around the boat with the dog, introduces him to the super religious chef, which is nice, tells him to get the dog out of the kitchen, says, okay, here's all my friends, and he takes him down to where all the animals are, makes a random joke about like how the faster we kill these animals and eat them for dinner, the less shit he has to clean up, which is... It's kind of morbid, but it's also kind of fair, because the kid's 9 and he would rather clean up less poop than more poop. What happens? We do 2 cliches in one here. Kids know something's fucked up before adults know things are fucked up, and animals know something's fucked up before people know things fucked up. The dog starts freaking out. The animals in the galley start freaking out. So the kid and the brand new guy on the team go to inspect the hull, and one of these crates is tipped over, and it's all full of dirt and whatever, and what they find in the dirt, it just looks like a bit of fabric, until you see that it's a woman who's very sick. I thought it was going to be Dracula, and they were going to do some weird thing where the person that he was trying to revive was actually Dracula, and I thought that would have been kind of hilarious, not going to lie. But here's where old sailor superstition comes in. First of all, she's a stowaway. She shouldn't be here. Let's chuck her into the sea. We know what to do with stowaways. We let Poseidon deal with them. There's a lot of different clashing of beliefs and deities in this, which I think is kind of cool, because it's true at the time. There's also a bit of casual racism tossed in from one or two of the crew members that, my opinion, didn't need to be there. It was just a little bit unpleasant, but it is what it is. I know people are going to say that that's representative of the time and we should represent it in the movie, but it didn't ultimately lead to anything. So from a story perspective, it didn't really make much sense. So he says, I didn't come on here to be your doctor to revive this woman so you could chuck her off the boat. The captain says, I don't want my last voyage on my ship here to be marred by the death of a young woman, even if she is a stowaway. So we're going to take another room, we're going to turn it into her quarters, which I'm sure the rest of the guys that are all sharing quarters really, really loved, but he slowly brings her back to health. And then overnight, stuff starts happening. Bloody stuff starts happening. The dog is dead. They killed the dog. What do you not do in the movies? You don't kill the dog. The dog is dead. The animals in the slaughterhouse are dead and all that kind of thing. And it's cool to see it from multiple perspectives, because Clemens, who's a doctor who wants the world to make sense, is examining all these animals and how they died and who could have done it and da-da-da-da. The crew members are saying, hey, that's the new guy, and he's the one defending this random stowaway woman. Maybe it was one of them. The captain is, just trying to figure it all out. All of them have to look at it from a perspective of, this is all of our food. It could be potentially diseased. We don't have food to get to our next port. And the kid disappears. And Clemens thinks it's only to, be sad about his dead dog, but he reveals in the conversation that, he's sad about the dead dog, but also, all this pressure's been put on him from his grandfather at the sunny age of 9, that all those animals were were his responsibility, and he's let everybody down. He's let the captain down, and basically, really, really sad, touching moment between him and Clemens, which builds that relationship even more, but also it shows the captain as, a fair person and a loving grandfather, whatever, but also a very tough grandfather with a lot of expectations and all that sort of thing. So stuff starts happening. People start dropping. people start dropping, accusations start flying around, and again, you get the clashing of beliefs. Is it the new guy? Is it the woman? Are the gods of the sea angry that we kept a stowaway alive? The guy, the cook, says, this is God's judgment on all of you because you're a whoremonger and you're a Jezebel and you're this and you're that. You've all sinned and this is why we're all being punished. So he thinks God's punishing them all. The rest of the crew, through superstition, are thinking this, that, and the next. And bodies start dropping. And they realize that something is going on this ship. They eventually figure out that something is killing these people. It's not one of them. It's not a person per se. And then they just start dropping, and it's the element of a vampire movie, a zombie movie, a monster movie, a ghost movie, or whatever, where one person sees it first. Oh, I saw this face up on the deck, and then another guy says, well, you're clearly crazy, but I'll tell you what I saw a tall figure, standing in the doorway and all that kind of thing. And then eventually bodies start dropping off the boat, and all you have left is blood. And they still, even at the point of, like, Clemens is there with them, he's the one that brought it all to their attention, some of them still want to blame him, and he's like, yeah, I did this miraculous plan of, like, gutting this guy, spreading his guts all over the fucking boat, chucking him out of the boat, holding the weapon in my hand while I call you guys, and managing to all be still clean at the same time. Like, go fuck yourself type of idea. One of the guys is not thrown over the edge. He is taken in for like medical observation. His neck's all fucked up. They still debate whether it's like claws or teeth or whatever the case may be. They tie him down because he's very much alive but not awake. And also the woman eventually wakes up, starts telling these ghost stories about her hometown that lived in the shadow of this big castle, this big demon. She had been offered to this big demon that they call Dracula so that the rest of the town could live in peace. So she's telling what sounds to them like a ghost story. Some of them think it's the anger of the sea. The guy in the kitchen still thinks it's God punishing all of them. And the doctor is trying to say, again, I go with that common thread of he really needs the world to make sense. I'm going to analyze this and let it make sense. When they start hearing about this thing, and the captain eventually bolts his grandson in the room and he just gives him a task. I think he says, a captain's nothing without his telescope, his spyglass. I need you to shine this up and do it properly and all that. So he leaves him in the room, locks the door, and the kid just shining up the spyglass, da-da-da-da-da. The crew member, and I'm really shit with names because he's not one of the main characters, he sort of sneaks out down a back hallway of the boat, and the first crew member to be bitten and killed and wake up again, the first one to sort of turn, as we would say in other vampire or zombie movies, is this guy that the kid obviously knows because he lives on the ship, and he goes up to him to see how, hey, you're better and all this type of thing, and he's all like dead in the eyes and his face is all fucked up, chases him back to the what was the word I was looking for, the captain's quarters, and realizes that obviously, whoever this guy was, Jimmy or Johnny or whoever, he ain't Jimmy or Johnny anymore. So locks the door, like basically sits on the other side of the door, really sad, with a knife in his hand, begging him like, hey, mister, I really need you to go away. And like a zombie movie, and this is where they sort of present this guy more like a zombie than a typical vampire as we would picture them. Because he just keeps walking at the door, and eventually he starts, headbutting his way through the door. And there really is a Jack Nicholson, here's Johnny moment, because he headbutts his way through the door there. And that's fine. Not realizing, at the same time, that actual Dracula is crouched in the corner. Because actual Dracula looks all emaciated and starved and whatever, because he's been in the fucking box and all that kind of thing. The way he lured one of the guys that he killed earlier on in the movie, and I didn't mention it a second ago because I'm rambling a little bit, was he was basically hiding under some steps looking all like unhealthy and weak and whatever, and that's what encouraged the guy to come over. It's like, how the hell did you get here, and what the fuck is wrong with you? And your lunch now. It is what it is. And at the time, when I was watching the movie, I was like, that's really, really, really interesting. Because is he actually that weak? Or is it the ruse that he used to get the attention? And they never really go one way or the other with that, which I think is cool, which goes to that sort of whispery ghost story type of atmosphere of the whole movie. Now, the big bad, newly turned guy headbutting his way through the door is where all the action is. You just see Dracula kind of moving behind the kid. And he starts knocking on the... Oh, there's another sort of theme that goes throughout the movie, and it's the sailors talking about how you don't have to bother yelling for somebody if you need some help, just bang along the pipes, and the reverberation goes through the whole ship, somebody will come. So he starts banging on the pipe from the captain's quarters, and everybody comes down, and they knock the guy down that's trying to get in, but there's only a small hole in the door, and none of them can fit through, and none of them can unlock the door, so the friggin' captain has to watch Dracula swoop down on his grandchild and take a bite out of the kid's neck. It's harrowing, the music swells, it's very dramatic, and this movie that has already quote-unquote killed the dog has, at least in that moment in the movie, has killed the kid. And that's terrible, horrible, because that's where you go back to, like I say, Liam Cunningham's character, who has all the gravitas in the movie. His reaction to this will shape the rest of the movie, because he's not only the captain, he's not only the most respected person in the story, but he just is. He's the king shit of the movie. So the kid doesn't actually die, which is fine. And they're all scrambling, they're talking to the woman, they're trying to make a plan, how do we do this, how do we do that? The super religious chef guy says, you know what, this is, you know, he does the whole, this is a doomed vessel, I'd rather throw myself out into the void, while everybody else is distracted with their stuff. He gets himself onto a boat and paddles out into the mist, going nowhere with his little lantern out there, and he gets swooped down on by Dracula. Now, here's where I have a problem with the movie, because Dracula can fly. And this is where we find out that Dracula can fly, because they don't know that Dracula can fly, and the only guy that can tell them that Dracula can fly is the super religious chef guy on the boat, who is seen no more, because he sends the little boat back to them with a bunch of guts in the bottom of it. But it's kind of the pterodactyls in Jurassic Park. Like, if there's flying dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, why didn't they ever show up anywhere else? Dracula could have flown to London. I'm just putting it out there. That's a minor thing. It's a minor thing, but it is what it is. We come back. The kid's not dead. The kid's being seen to. He's getting blood transfusions, just like the woman got blood transfusions that brought her back to life. And she tells more of her story, more about how, you know, she was kept as food for Dracula and all this type of thing. And as you see her more and more, and every time she tells her story, she like moves a sleeve or like shifts her t-shirt, and you can see another scar on her back, on her arms, etc. And basically the idea was that he was rationing himself. So the caskets the crates. I work in shipping. I should be specific, and I should say crates, right? The one that she fell out of, there's like 20 other of them, and it's food. It's rations to get him from there to London. And they open them all up, and then they get to the one that he's in, and it's not just a crate. It's this big mechanical thing that's meant to hold him inside, and they start making plans on how to kill him. That's the word I'm looking for. Their guy that lost it, that tried to go after the kid, is still alive, like as a vampire, and they have him tied to the mast so that he can't do anything. And he starts vaguely trying to explain what's happening to him, like, you know, I can see everything, I can feel everything, like I can smell the air, I can hear all of your heartbeats, I can listen to the water and all this type of thing. And as the sun comes up, we get the obvious next piece of the vampire equation, which is, you know, vampires don't like sunlight. So when he says, I'm burning up, and they mistake it, and they just go to get him a glass of water, by the time they get him a glass of water, he's burst into flames, which is also not great, because technically that should have also burned down the mast. It doesn't, but it should have. But it sets in your head what the motions are for the mechanics of a vampire movie. You know, stake through the heart, silver bullet, don't let them go out in the sun, etc., etc., etc. We get back into some of the tropes that we know from other movies. Now, after all that happens, we're rushing to tell the captain that not only is this guy burst into flames, but we also know that the chef guy is gone now. And you see the captain sort of looking over his boy, and he just sort of gives them all the dead stare, and they kind of know what's going on. Despite the best efforts of the doctor, this kid has died from his injuries and whatever. So now, he thought he saw his kid die at the hands of Dracula in the room where there was a hole where he could only watch because they couldn't get in there. That's helpless. He then had to sit at his bedside and deal with unknown injuries and infections. And they keep calling it an infection because they don't know what a fucking vampire is. So now he's watched his kid die twice. He's talking to Clemens on the bow of the ship, talks about how it's a cursed ship and we're all going to hell, and he's basically surrendering to the despair of the moment. It's a really, really, really cool scene, and this Corey Hawkins that plays the Clemens, he bounces off of him quite well because he's able to play his role and still let all the gravitas be on the other. I'm using the word gravitas a lot, but it's the only word I can think of. The only the weight of Liam Cunningham's character is what shines through here, and you need somebody else on the other side of that conversation to maintain it, but still let him have his moment. And while they're talking, he's like, "Okay, we've prepared the boy. He's all wrapped up." And you see him. They have the body all wrapped up, and he's on the edge of the boat there, and nobody really knows what to say. And the woman that not everybody wanted there, the woman that has tried to tell them what this threat is, steps up, and she says a couple really nice words, and she says amen, and the rest of them all say amen. So I think it's kind of cool because it's finally a moment that she can just contribute something, not positive because it's not a positive moment, but something respectful to the group, and have them just accept it rather than reject her like they've been doing. But they're about to chuck him in the sea because that's what sea people do. And you think denial starts creeping in on the captain. He says, "No, you can't throw him. You can't throw him in the water. I just saw him move. I swear I just saw him move." And it's heartbreaking, right? Because you would see somebody. It's like in a regular movie when somebody's in the hospital and they're doing the clear, the defibrillator pads and whatever, and there's no heartbeat. And you'd have a parent or a loved one or a wife or a husband saying, "Do it again, do it again, do it again," when clearly the person's gone. Well, this is the creepy pirate vampire movie equivalent of that. He said, "I swear I saw him move. I swear I saw him move. Unwrap him. Unwrap him. I need to see him. I saw him move." Unwraps him, and the kid looks very dead. My applause to the makeup artist on that one. Eyes fly open. The eyes are dead because that's what it does to them. The same thing with the other fella that already turned earlier. All you see is the whites of their eyes. His eyes pop open, and I guess that's the moment that he sort of is 100% vampire, because not only do his eyes pop open and he reaches out to kill his grandfather, but also, because it happens to be daytime, the kid also bursts into flames. So here he is holding on to his grandfather. The grandfather, in his sorrow, also holding on to him. The grandfather gets horribly burned and chucked to the floor, and the rest of the crew chuck the kid off the boat because fire and pain and all this kind of thing. So from there, we have a plan. We're going to trap this thing. We're going to sink the Demeter, and there's another argument, because there has to be another argument, because there's more arguments in this movie. The bigger threat in this movie than Dracula is the arguments between these people that keep them from coming together and working against Dracula. Because ultimately they think, okay, we need to trap him on the boat, we need to sink the boat. Well, the captain's grieving in another room. The first mate, the Wojciech character played by David Dasmalchian, says, "No, you're not going to sink this boat. I live on this boat. This boat is my home. You're not going to do it." And the Clemens character again comes through with a great monologue where he says, "My dad used to work on a ship," and this could be total bullshit. That's the brilliant part of this scene, because they don't know him from anybody. He could tell them anything, but he says, "My dad used to be a ship. He used to load the boats and whatnot, and he always told me that the important part of the ship, the part that stayed with you, isn't the wood and the nails. It's the crew and the memories. So let's sink the ship, get rid of this fucker, let's go to London, let's warn people," like all this type of thing, right? He still doesn't let him do it. He still takes the axe away, and he's like, "Well, it's my home. If I'm going to do it, we're going to do it myself." All right. He goes to tell the captain about the story. The captain is Dunzo, like completely dunzo, and pulls a gun on him, pulls a gun on the Anna character, and he just says, you know what, don't sink the boat, go to London. And in his despair, he's like, just, you guys go to London, I'll drive the boat, or I'll sail the boat as far away from land as I possibly can. And he's like, well, why? You don't have to, like, it's fighting the typical, like, nautical story of the captain has to go down with the ship. He's like, you don't have to do that. And he kind of looks at him, and he says, what do I have to go back to? Because, as I say, it's heavily implied that the rest of his family's already gone. That's why he has his grandson, and now his grandson is gone. And as I say, I go back to what I said a second ago. It's not that he lost his grandson. It's that he lost his grandson 3 times. You know, I go back to the beginning of the movie, and I sort of do that tick box thing. I was like, oh my god, the movie killed the dog. Anything can happen. And then you killed the kid. Then you brought the kid back, and you gave the grandfather a bit of hope. And you killed him again. And then you gave the grandfather hope again, so that his dead grandson burst into flames in his arms. So, metaphorically speaking, every time he looks at the scars on his hands and the scars on his face, he's going to remember watching his son burst into flames. That's terrible. That is absolutely terrible. But anyways, they do the thing. They set up the trap. The last two people... So I'd say the last 2 people to fight are from the crew are Wojciech and one of the last crew members. They get picked off because they're in the crow's nest and they don't know that this thing can fly. Well, how do they know that this thing can fly? Well, Dracula picks off one of them and throws them like a bloody mosquito at the mast. The other one falls off. Wojciech falls out of the crow's nest through the floor into the what do you call it? What do you want to call it? The storage area. Breaks his leg instead of breaking his head, which he should have because of the way that he fell. The way it was filmed was kind of awkward. I'm not going to lie, but he's like, all right, I'm fucked. My leg's broken. I'm not going anywhere, but I am going to sink the ship. Sinks the ship. Dracula eats him. Whatever. The captain has a standoff with Dracula by the steering wheel. It's very dramatic. He thinks... Like, he's literally, because of all the horrendous things he's just seen, he literally thinks that Dracula is the devil. So he holds up his son's rosary beads that were given to him by Anna after the kid passed away, and the Dracula just kind of smiles at him and not only kills him, but Dracula, which is really weird, ties him to the steering wheel of the ship, like sort of Jesus is on the cross type of thing, because of the whole rosary thing. And it's sort of symbolic in a couple different ways. It's like you died sacrificially, like the Jesus story, on the steering wheel, but also you're the captain of the ship. The whole idea of going down with the ship, of course you would die being attached to the steering wheel. And Clemens is there right as he's fading away and whatever, you know, like, here, take this. He gives the rosary beads to Clemens, says, you know, just when you get to London, when you talk to people, tell them about me, tell them I tried my best and I did my duty. And he's like, yeah. He takes him down from the steering wheel. He basically says, yeah, I'll pass it on, but we've still got this thing to deal with. So it's just him and Anna. Obviously, there's no couples in the movie. They're not a couple by any stretch of the imagination, but they are the couple by virtue of the fact that there's nobody else left. They fight this thing. Dracula actually speaks. There's a couple other times in the movie where he kind of growls and sort of makes sounds that sounded like words. I couldn't make them out. The only time I could make out what Dracula actually says is when Clemens says, "I'm not scared of you." And Dracula says, well, you will be. And at that point, Anna comes up from behind and cuts some rope that's attached to something If you've seen Pirates of the Caribbean, you know that any rope can be used for anything at any time. And basically, it traps. Don't know why I couldn't think of the word traps, but it traps Dracula between these two big sail posts as the ship goes down and as they float away on some debris, and then it flashes forward to where the movie actually begins, where it's just people finding wreckage of the boat, and the story that we've been watching the whole movie is the people that found the boat reading the captain's log, which is what it's based on from the Dracula movie, etc., etc., etc. But you have Clemens and Anna on a piece of wreckage, and because she's been bitten all over again. She's been injured all over again. And she sort of says, hey, look at me. She's got the fucked up eyes. She said, you were never going to cure me. What you were doing was just, you know, keeping me going, pretty much. I don't have enough time to make it to shore, etc., etc. So just leave me be. Let me do one thing my way. My people gave me to Dracula. I didn't have any choice in that. Let me have a choice in this. She props herself up on a piece of wreckage as the sun comes up and bursts into flames, and her in flames floats away. And then we flash forward a little bit and we get a monologue from Clemens at the end, and it's just like, I've stopped trying to understand absolutely everything about the world because I know that there's like a dark, seedy underbelly, but I've also seen the good that can come up and rise up against an evil like that, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life chasing this monster. And then he hears the banging. He's sitting in a bar or a pub or a tavern or something of that description while he's writing all this. And the inner monologue is basically what he's writing, because he's now writing his own log, his own journal, etc. He's looking for the place where those crates were supposed to be delivered. Don't know what happened to the rest of the bodies and the rest of the crates. They don't really specify that. But he basically hears a bunch of banging, and it's a cane hitting the ground. And it's a figure in the shadows of the pub with the cape, with the collar up and the hat down, and just sort of like, I don't want to say this and make it sound the wrong way, because it is still Dracula, it is still with the Dracula face, but he sort of turns with, I can only call it a smirk, until he disappears out the door, and you're left with this, you know, Batman running into the spotlight type of moment where he's chasing Dracula through the streets of London, and we're left to believe that Clemens has now dedicated his life to the final destruction of Dracula. And I'm assuming, I've never read Bram Stoker's Dracula. And if this is only one chapter and this is where we go from here, I assume that he just goes on and makes it his life to, you know, hunt down Dracula, hunt down Dracula's servants, etc. This was very good, very intriguing. For a monster movie, it still managed to have sad moments that were really sad, like the before the kid bursts into flames, the funeral service that they have for him is actually, I want to say, really touching for a movie like this, but it was just really well done in general. If you can manage to have actual real human emotions about a movie that's not strictly about humans, it's a good time. People wonder why I watch the fucked up movies that I do, and it's very simple, and I'm not trying to be dramatic about this, but like, the real world sucks. Look around in your neighborhoods, look around in your states, provinces, watch the news, check out social media. The real world sucks. I want something as far away from the real world as possible most of the time. I can go in the real world and watch people destroy each other, or I can go watch a movie and watch Dracula destroy pirates. I know what I'm going to choose when that comes. And like I say, it doesn't have the huge, over-the-top, blockbuster, super shiny, everything explodes moments. Like, yeah, you saw one guy burst into flames in the middle of the movie just so that the audience could know that that could happen, so that the second time that happens, it's not just a fireworks display, it's actually really, really sad. What else do I want to say about this? The vibe, like I said it at the beginning, and I'll try to make it make more sense now. It is a whisper. This whole movie is somebody whispering a ghost story at you, and it's left to interpretation. A lot of the stuff that happens in the dark with Dracula is interpretation. You don't see a lot of Dracula until the final fight. There is very much an early Jaws, just show the fin, just let people think it's their element to that. And if I was going to compare it to anything, these are two vastly different things, but imagine whatever your favorite Pirates of the Caribbean is, and mix that with Interview with the Vampire. Like the Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise, they're both really weird and miscast, but that movie. Like the subtle, quiet, sort of sophisticated element of that, and stuff that's piratey, because pirates, and also Johnny Depp's documentary comes out this week, so I just wanted to throw in Pirates of the Caribbean somewhere there. I cannot recommend this enough, and I'm saying this now, hopefully if you've listened this far into the pod, you're listening because you've already seen the movie, but if by chance you wanted all the spoilers, go see this movie. This movie is awesome. It's really good. If you're like me and you've got a little bit of like blockbuster fatigue, it is the perfect counterbalance to that. And I think that's me being the guy that likes the blockbusters, me wanting the opposite and this fulfilling that as well has also meant that the next time I go see a blockbuster, I'm fresh and ready for that as well. Now, don't know if that's going to happen because the next movie I'm probably going to see is Saw 10. Oh yes, we're going to talk about Saw 10. I've got a trailer reaction for Saw 10. If you haven't seen that already, go back a few pods. It's fine. I know there's a lot of wrestling stuff to wade through, but you can check my trailer reaction for Saw 10 as well. Please go check this out. If you like vampires, if you like pirates, if you are like me and you just want to escape the real world for a little bit and get into some other tropes, absolutely, it's a fantastic movie, and I've rambled, clearly, for about 40 minutes about it. Anyways, that's all. Go check out Last Voyage of the Demeter. I will say, I haven't even mentioned it that much, because it's not even really a factor, but the way they modeled Dracula, like, effects-wise, visually, really, really cool, and really, really did a good job of making it not look like, wow, there's a bunch of special effects, or there's a guy in a rubber costume. So, I didn't mention it because it was so well done that it wasn't part of it, if that makes sense. That's my last rambling thought. I've tacked on about 5 rambling thoughts at the end here, so I'm going to cut myself off right now. I've been Spaz. This has been Flix Fix. Subscribe up there, talk down there, start a conversation. Keep up all these conversations in the comment section down below. I've been Spaz. Once again, I fucked up my outro. Please don't be a stranger. I'll talk to each and every last one of you later, but for right now, I'm